Alright everyone, today we start off with a really funny story here. Archived link in the description. Biden is effectively allowing Goldman Sachs to profiteer off the war in Ukraine, off of US and Western arms shipments into Ukraine. Not a surprise, Biden has upheld certain loopholes allowing this to occur, and it's not limited to Biden. Of course, this profiteering has been going on for a very, very long time. The US is involved with it. The Germans are big time involved with it. The British and the French, the Russians, and before them the Soviet Union as well. China, every major player in the world that has an arms industry has a parasitic class associated with that industry that profiteers off of shipments. It's basically a parasite. It's like a tapeworm infesting the intestine of the world's economies. That being said, it is funny, because I seem to recall Goldman Sachs. As a millennial, that rings a bell. Wasn't that the perpetual boogeyman of all the liberals, most of which I'm presuming voted for Joe Biden if they voted at all in 2020? I thought Goldman Sachs was a big problem. They were one of the main evils. They were donated to Romney and Obama, wink wink, nudge nudge, in 2012 of course. They had donated to McCain. Now you've got, thus pushing the concept of, if not a flipping of the party ideologies over the last half-decade, at least a flipping of aspects of their ideologies, namely whether they get corporate cash. Now Goldman Sachs CEO in the last election was giving $200,000 to Joe Biden. Well, that's interesting. The Republicans have deconverted from mainly a top-down corporate class to a populist one, mainly because of local and state efforts, regional efforts at the lower level, especially due to internet activism, spurring it on. The Democrats have sort of languished and been left behind in the 2000s and in the 1990s as far as the way they're structured. Still very top-down, and this is why they're having political problems. So now they've also become the sponge for corporate money. Now, and I please ask something. The U.S. is not at war with Russia. We have a problem with the fact that Russia declared war on Ukraine and invaded and is attempting to either annex or create a puppet state or something. It's not 100% clear what Putin's goal is at this point. He's having problems in and around Kiev because, he's got hundreds of thousands of people laying traps for him at any given moment. If the United States is not at war, that is, there's no direct conflict with the U.S. or NATO. Ukraine's not in NATO. Why is this loophole not closed? We get a liberal president, okay, supposedly peace and love. That's a fucking bad joke, but this is the way liberals at least thought in the past. Now all of a sudden you've got them crying for war. Most of these people support the concept of running a no-fly zone over Ukraine that could very well spark World War III. Even if it doesn't spark a nuclear war, even if cooler heads prevail, it would cause a world war. And then, you definitely need a lot of negotiations, because if anyone starts to lose too badly, they probably press the fucking button. Nobody apparently in Biden's camp has thought of this fact. The Russians, by the way, just reaffirming, yeah, nukes are always on the table. Not that there was any confusion about that. Any reasonable person knows a nuclear power keeps that option. They just keep it very close to their chest, trotting it out specifically to tell other people to shut the fuck up and go away and leave them alone. Trump did this too, so let's not be hypocritical here. But to allow Goldman Sachs to be making boatloads of money, and as a conflict of interest, because again, Goldman Sachs was a donor to Biden, I would think that at some point this becomes a social problem, like an optics loss for the Biden admin among his fans. But the problem is this. Here's a big problem. It won't be widely reported on. It'll be mentioned page B by a couple of legacy outlets that will lie by omission or by structure in their articles anyway and bury the good stuff halfway down. And none of Biden's fans, because they're not high-info voters, or they wouldn't have voted for Biden, none of them will even know that this is happening. Especially the 30-something, like the millennial core liberal voters, when they hear Goldman Sachs, they start frothing at the mouth. Or at least they did. They were also very anti-war. I remember seeing anti-war student marches and shit when I was at UVM back at the end of the 2000s. Because, you're in Iraq and Afghanistan at the time, and Bush is president. It starts to dry up when Obama gets elected. No, fighting's still going, but there's Democrats in office. And look, he went on Ellen DeGeneres. That makes me feel so much more calm about all the dying orphans over in the third world. This is the way that most voters think, by the way. I hate to tell you this. This is the plurality of people. This is why democracy is not a good thing. Having a very constitutional republic, probably we need one that's got a beefier constitution, that works. Hopefully, people appreciate the Constitution, it gets broadly applied, and you have limitations on the abuse that can happen, and then the idea is that hopefully meritocratic individuals tend to be the ones elected. As we see, that's not usually the case, but you can constrain the problem. Direct democracy is terrible. A horrible idea. It's a form of authoritarianism, by the way, as well. Biden, meanwhile, he's not an authoritarian because he can't even choose what to eat for breakfast or put on his own fucking socks. His wife probably has to dress him. His staff constantly have to lead him around like a puppy. And so you get a situation where you've got arms dealing, profiteering going on. Who do you think is greenlighting this and making sure that no solution to this problem exists? Probably a bunch of war generals. Some people in Congress with Raytheon stock and stuff like that. All of them get money from groups like Goldman Sachs. Do you realize how big their influence on U.S. politics is? I wonder why they could possibly be invited to make money off of human suffering and misery. I wonder why the government would do that. This benevolent liberal administration that talks a big game and has for weeks now about peace and its importance, but is still doing the arms dealer thing. This is cutthroat cartel sort of activity. This is basically legalized cartel activity when you think about it. This is like a third world tin horn has his cocaine supply lines. The United States and Russia and all the other major players, we just sell guns to people. Now, as a person who has no problem with the U.S. selling guns to the Ukrainians, I just wish that those same military weapons were sold to the U.S. public because I'm a purist for the Second Amendment and for the Constitution in general. No problem with that whatsoever. But there shouldn't be a bunch of politically connected banksters making money off of those sales. That part doesn't need to be happening. Oddly enough, I'll probably get called like pro-Russia by some of the liberals out there. It's very, very interesting to see the cognitive dissonance. If you criticize the Biden campaign, it means that you're sucking Putin's boots. Now, again, kind of low-info voters, but I'm not going to let Goldman Sachs skate without being mentioned. I think people should, probably most of you didn't even know that this was going on. I got like one tip about this. This is a buried story. The less that I hear about something, in some cases, the more important it turns out to be when I actually look into it. Again, massive lie by omission. It's not just articles. It's not just individual news groups. It's the entire legacy media. When they shut out a story like, Hunter Biden's laptop, that's when you know it's actually important. When they report widely on something, it may or may not be important. It might just be a bunch of filler to knock the former stories off the front page. That's about all. Peace out.